the initiative today came as a result of some of the efforts, I think, long-standing efforts of a local reporter, Tom Godfrey.
Public Safety Minister Vic Toews calling out Sun Media's Tom Godfrey for his reporting, which led to the release of names. You remember that list of names? Well, they've expanded that. Ezra Levant joins us now from his studio in Toronto. Ezra, you've been following this story as well. You had Vic Toews on earlier today. Did you bring along a clip? Can you give people a tease of what he had to say?
Minister Toews was crystal clear. This whole idea of getting the public in general to help round up these suspected war criminals, and his new announcement today of 32 convicted criminals who are just permanent residents. This idea was a Sun Media idea. Tom, you mentioned Tom from the Toronto Sun, but there's another Tom Broadbeck from the Winnipeg Sun. The Sun newspapers and the Sun News Network is the tough-on-crime media that helped Vic Toews push this through against the Justice Department lawyers who didn't want to violate the privacy of criminals. Can you believe it? It was.
I can. Let's hear a quick clip. We've got a quick clip from Vic Toews talking to you on The Source earlier today.
Okay.
I was somewhat skeptical. I didn't know what the reaction would be of the local communities, and in fact the local communities where many of these individuals are from are the ones who came forward and gave us all kinds of tips, and in fact the other thing that this list did was show out shortcomings that we have in our system. I mean, why we aren't sharing these names with our international allies, the Americans. The Americans located one of these individuals in their detention facilities as a result of going through the list.
So, I mean, amazing that that people had to be convinced that putting up a wanted poster, something we still see in movies today, it's not just old westerns, but putting out a wanted poster might work.
You know, the minister was clear that it seemed clear to me at least, that he wants to continue to do this. He said they only put out 32 names now because he didn't want to put out over 1,000 that might get lost. I think what we can expect to see, if I understood him right, is that every month or so he might release another 30 names and another 30 names and really refresh the top 30 bad guys in people's minds. I think that's a smart way, because if he were just to dump 1,000 names, no one would look through all 1,000. But I bet you people all across Canada are going to review these pictures that we're seeing on the screen right now and say, oh, I know that guy, or I've seen that guy in my neighborhood, or oh, he works with me. And these are serious convicted criminals. I asked the minister, well, what kind of crimes? He said these people have been convicted of murder, of rape, of serious drug trafficking. These are not shoplifters or people who did some trivial matter. These are the worst of the worst, and yet they are in our communities right now. I would put it to you, Brian, that they're actually a danger, let alone just a breaking of the law. So I'm very pleased that the Sun, Tom Broadbeck and Tom Godfrey in particular, get the credit for the minister making the move.
Now, previously we had people mocking this idea and saying, oh, I expect, you know, Jason Kennedy to be kicking down the door of America's Most Wanted type show and busting people, but, you know, you don't put out too many because you need another criminal for next week. That's the type of response that you heard from places like the CBC. Now, state broadcasters running the pictures of these guys. They wouldn't with the people who were on the war criminals and crimes against humanities list, but they're going to run with these ones.
You know, I talked to Minister Toews about that very issue today, and I asked him, why is it that the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation and other parts of the media political legal elite, like the Canadian Bar Association, why are they against bringing criminals to justice? Why are they always on the side of terrorists like Omar Khadr? Why are they always the first to criticize CSIS, the RCMP, and the Canadian Forces? And the Minister Toews, he was pretty clear. He said there is a cultural divide here. And I think that Minister Toews and the Conservative government and Jason Kenney on this file are on the side of justice and on the side of the people. And I think let the CBC squawk. Let the CBC, you know, go to bat for these criminals and murderers and terrorists. It just shows how out of touch the CBC is with the zeitgeist of the country.
Now, I want to ask you about another issue that I know you've been following, and that's Bill C-51. It's a criminal justice thing, and generally you're a law and order guy, you're on the side of the cops. But this is the bill that, the part that worries you is that it's worded so vaguely that in your opinion, in my opinion, in lawyer Annan Shanoff's opinion, and others, it could turn people into criminals for putting up a hyperlink. Daniel Prusalides interviewed Justice Minister Rob Nicholson over the phone yesterday from Cape Breton and said, there are all these people saying this is an issue. Isn't that a sign that a judge could view it in that way and decide, well, it means you're a criminal because you link to something that's deemed hateful later on? He said, no, the law's tight, but he gave himself a little wiggle room. He said these things are still being studied. Are you hopeful by that, or do you think that the Justice Minister on this issue is offside with where the Canadian people are?
You know, Rob Nicholson, the Justice Minister, he's an affable man, he's a likable man, he's a pleasant man, but when it comes to ideological strength, he just doesn't have it. And so he caves in to his legal bureaucrats, the lawyers in the Department of Justice. By the way, Brian, it was Rob Nicholson's Justice Department lawyers that tried to stop Vic Toews from releasing those pictures. I told you that some government lawyers didn't want to violate the privacy of these murderers. Those lawyers were Rob Nicholson's lawyers. So he gives in too easily to the advice from his left-wing lawyers. I regret that Rob Nicholson isn't as tough on murderers as he wants to be to people who share links on Facebook. And that's really what it means. I mean, viewers might be saying, well, I don't have a blog. I don't put links on the internet. Yes, you do. If you have a Facebook page and if you share a link to a goofy video or a dumb joke, anything that could be a feelings crime. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about real crimes. We're talking about hurting someone's feelings. The government calls it hate propaganda. If you insult someone based on national origin, that's another thing Rob Nicholson wants to add to the law. So if you make a Polish joke or a Mexican joke or an anti-American joke, it's no longer a matter of is that good taste or bad taste, are you being mean or not? Are you a criminal now? And simply just linking to it on Facebook, you can now be prosecuted for a crime. Brian, do you really trust the Department of Justice lawyers with that massive power? I do not.
You know the answer to that. I don't. But I think that what you should take away from what he said, and share this with your audience as well, is keep up the pressure on him, because in my view, him saying, well, it's going to be studied, shows that slightest crack, and you keep up the pressure like we did on this other stuff. It can work. Another victory, though, and again, Sun having a part in it. Calgary Sun reporting now that that city giving up its crack pipe program, which is handing out free crack pipes.
You know what? I had to check the calendar to make sure it wasn't April Fool's Day, because the idea that a government would take tax dollars and hand out free crack pipes, that for folks who are not believing, this is something that you smoke crack cocaine in. I mean, it's like opposite day. You know, on that Seinfeld episode when George Costanza, it was opposite day. Everything all his instincts, he flipped them. Now in Costanza's case, it was hilarious because he was such a goofy, dumb guy most of the time. Opposite day, his life really got better. Well, it's like the police and the government were on opposite day here. Instead of enforcing the law, they aided law breaking. Instead of cracking down on the use of crack cocaine, they helped it. It was opposite day in the justice system, which unfortunately, Brian, it's opposite day in the justice system far too long.
They've changed their mind. They're going to end the free crack pipes. I think that's good news. Ezra, we're out of time. We're going to have to cut you there.
Thanks, my friend. It's a Sun victory, you know.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.